strategy. Ken Pomela, the visionary founder of RevStar, is taking the virtual stage to drop some brutally honest ideas that could make or break your business. In this explosive session, Ken will peel back the curtain on the AI secrets your competitors are desperately trying to keep under wraps. You'll discover cutting edge tactics to leverage AI for explosive growth while avoiding the costly pitfalls that have crippled countless companies. So, with that, Ken, welcome to the Software Spotlight.
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, wonderful. No, and I know a lot of our listeners are looking at all the options for growing their business and incorporating new technologies like AI into some of their SaaS solutions and some of their web solutions. And I was hoping you could give us a little bit of background or a peek behind the scenes at RevStar and the company you've built and what caused you to jump into the space.
So I've just always been involved in technology. I was building computers when I was a young guy with my dad, and I taught myself how to code early on. It's just always been a space I've been interested in. So down the line after a career in corporate America, I decided to quit my day job, start a software development company. I thought, hey, I can do this better and going to change the dynamic that companies have with agencies, bring more transparency, more accountability, better alignment with outcomes. So, like I said, every good entrepreneur, we always want to do it better, and been had really good success on the software development side. Obviously, the last couple of years, AI has become a hot new trend. So we've been pivoting and helping our customers implement AI into the systems we've built, and then helping other companies kind of figure out what their AI strategy will be and how they can prepare themselves for implementing AI into their business.
And if I saw right, it looks like you're heading into your second decade as a business. It looks like the company has been around for some time.
Yeah, I actually started this as a side hustle early in my corporate career, so it's been around a long time. It's really been the last six or so years that I've been full time focused on it.
Great, and it sounds like the employee base and the number of people working on the different projects has grown pretty dramatically as well.
Yeah, it's well, tech is always changing. It's always growing. So we've been definitely riding the wave the last few years. COVID accelerated a lot for us with folks building new systems and wanting to modernize their technology. So we've seen a lot of growth over the last few years.
Now, obviously, cloud native software development is the norm nowadays. But what inspired you to kind of focus on cloud native software development?
I was really excited about it early on. It just made sense to me that you're using components that are pre-built and that can scale. And so I was trying to implement these things at my day job and trying to find my own developers, find vendors, and nobody knew how to do this stuff. We're talking 2015, 2016 when this was not popular. And so this was one of the catalysts that caused me to want to venture out on my own. It's like, if I'm interested in this, I'm able to pull this off on side projects. Why can't I find anyone to help me with this? So I knew there was going to be a need. Now it's becoming a little bit more mainstream. And so I think I was ahead of the curve there, which was great. But really, for me, all this is always driven out of my own curiosity and passion for these technologies.
Now, obviously, each client that comes to you has different needs, but are there, different platforms that you work on or, specific platforms that you're focused on?
Yeah, we're primarily an AWS shop. I had a long career as a .NET developer, and so spent a lot of years in Microsoft stack. But when I quit work to do this full time, I was very into AWS and the stack that they provided. They were way out ahead of the other cloud providers and the types of components offered and the creative solutions I could build with the cloud native architecture. So I made a shift towards more open source, and AWS is still the leader, right? So I think I made a good choice there. But
Yeah,
it allows us to move faster for customers, and there's more as a service components, right? So it drives the cost down. There's less customization needed. So we'll continue to stay partnered with them. With that said, there's other platforms. We partnered with Palantir more recently on the AI side. They have a lot of great model as a service offerings and different models. A lot of really good pre-built use cases. So we're always looking at, how can we help our customers do it faster, better, cheaper, and which partnerships give us the, most alignment in that mission.
It's interesting that you bring up Palantir. I was actually just before we jumped on the episode, listening to a podcast from the guys from Sampar and his name doesn't come to mind, but from My First Million, their podcast, they actually interviewed one of the founders of Palantir. So interesting startup there, and they've not such a startup anymore. They're really quite a player in the market space, but. No, it really is all of these different technologies, bringing them together. A lot of them are, like you said, building blocks, and obviously you have Microsoft with Azure, and you have Google with their cloud services and AWS. But the building blocks, it's like anything. If you could have all the best tools in the world, but if you don't know what to do with them, or you don't know how to put it all together, it doesn't mean much of anything. So how do you guide clients to, along that journey as they're, from, maybe you could take us through like a day in the life, like as you just getting started with a client all the way through to when they launch their solution, what that kind of looks like.
And so, every client's different. Some clients come to us and they're very open slate. They're like, hey, what's the best way to build this, right? Often others we've been doing it this way forever. So, a lot of it's just understanding where they're at in their journey currently, and then meeting them where they're at. And oftentimes, you've been doing something the same way for a long time, but it doesn't mean we won't suggest a different way of doing it and try to educate you on the benefits. So there's a very consultative approach to what we do. There's a lot of folks that are just builders, right? They're like, give me a packet of requirements, we'll go
Yeah.
build it. But we actually, help clients ideate their systems and what they might be able to do, or analyze the problems and bottlenecks they have, create and design those solutions. Sometimes that involves doing some user experience design for a product that requires a user interface, or planning out the architecture, but touching all the different pieces of a system and making sure that there's good alignment with the how it'll be done. So we really go from the what's going to be done, the how it's going to be done, and then kind of get into who's going to do it, right? Are we taking and owning this piece of work 100% ourselves? Are we working alongside an existing team? So everybody's different. You have to be a little bit fluid and be able to pivot and adapt depending on who you're working with.
So are a lot of the clients that come to you clients with an idea, or are many of the clients maybe in with both feet and got in over their head and need someone to help out with a project, or what do you see? What's more common?
For us, it's a little bit of both. So we do a lot of new product build. We saw that, I think more and more coming out of COVID. We're doing a lot of modernization projects now. So I have, existing platforms that are riddled with technical debt or in very old technologies. What's a roadmap to get to more modern, scalable cloud applications? So the market shifts. There's, everybody's at a little bit different point in their journey. So right now we're talking to a lot of folks about how they implement AI. So we have to look at your data. Where's your data at? Where is it stored? How's it classified? How clean is it? Right. So, everybody's at a little bit of a different place. Folks who come to us for a net new system, right? Some new product, we're building that on the cloud from the start. The data is easily accessible. So if you start your journey off from the right place, it's a lot easier to come in and then implement some of these emerging technologies.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's easier to start from scratch than to take something that already exists and rebuild it to where you would hope it could be. And AI, obviously, like you mentioned, is something that is been around for some time with different names and all of that, but has really ramped up since the Open AI project. what are you seeing in terms of clients that are successfully, implementing AI versus those that are running into pitfalls along the way?
A couple of things. I think it's having um, the data in a good place, or being able to at least work with someone who can help you roadmap how to get that data into a good place. The other thing is size of project, right? So we're a big fan of let's build a proof of concept. How do we build something in a couple of months to show that there's value? So, taking a smaller data set, you don't always have to have huge data sets either, right? Sometimes it's actually better to have, smaller amounts of parameters from a cost standpoint as well, but just to prove something out. So we help one customer, they're in last mile delivery logistics. There's some of their data still in spreadsheets, some is in a platform that we built. So step one is how do we get some of these things you're still managing operationally into the system so that we have one clean data set? And then how do we mimic the human aspect of how you're doing dispatching in this case? Can we get, the system to spit out a name and then have the existing dispatchers verify it's a good choice, right? So that's a good step one, getting the data in, getting a name generated, before we go try to implement that into the system, let it run loose in the wild, right? So step one is POC, step two, train, step three, rollout, right? And so just having a good strategy, taking it in steps versus trying to bite off, the elephant all in one bite.
Yeah. And as far as your solution versus some of the other choices that companies may be looking at as they're looking to roll out new or update existing solutions, what if you were to bullet point a couple of big advantages to going with your solution versus some of the other options out there? What do you see as the pros and cons?
I think, look, we're custom builders, so you're coming to us because you have a need that isn't covered by a third party platform. So some folks just want to turn on Copilot in their Microsoft Office, and that's, you don't probably need us for that. Um, some people are just using Chat GPT. It's the logical first step. It costs less than what you pay for lunch, right? So you can try out generative AI that way. But for folks who want to have tight control over their data, really strong guardrails, they want to know who's training their model, what the team looks like, who's behind it. You don't always get that transparency from a third party product. So a lot of the ethical concerns are mitigated by being in control of your own IP, right? So even if you're building on an Amazon, you have your own isolated environment for your data. You're training a base model, so it's still cheaper and more cost effective than building everything from scratch. But you ultimately own and control this, and you can work with us to get it to work exactly how you want it, and you can be confident about what's in the ingredients, right? So that's really the big advantage over building something custom. Now the disadvantage, it's not $20 a month, right? So it has to ROI for you. Calculating the ROI on that sometimes is clear. It's like, hey, if I spend X amount of dollars over X amount of time, I have this solution. It replaces, Y number of individuals on our team. Um, but it's not always the case, right? Sometimes this will make somebody 10% more efficient, 30% more efficient. And you can't prove that out until you actually finish the solution and have people using it. So I'm always a fan of, if you can buy something and it works, absolutely go for it. If you feel comfortable with who's behind it and what's in the recipe, it's always more cost efficient to do it that way. But there's plenty of use cases and plenty of times where you want to own control of your platform, the IP. You want to call someone like us.
Makes sense. And I think one of the other things that we spoke about before the podcast, you have your own team, right? So that's probably an area where you have a lot more control over the final deliverable product than a completely outsourced organization.
Yeah, and we're a diverse team too, right? So we're not only in the U.S., but we also have a team in Colombia. So we have some pretty diverse perspectives. We have some other folks that are scattered out around the world. So we're a global team, for lack of a better term, versus if this is trained by three people that all live in the same city. that
Right.
have the same socioeconomic status. You may get different results, right? Maybe not as diverse results. So that's important too, right? Is who's working on this and what does their team look like?
So, what are some of the biggest challenges that companies face when they're undertaking a digital transformation initiative?
Just having the right plan, having the right partner, somebody that helps you understand what you're getting into and can help, hold your hand through that implementation. These are generally longer projects if you're talking a full on digital transformation. So, how do you break that up into pieces? How do you get early wins, move through it in a more agile model? It's like anything. If you have the right plan and the right people, it tends to have a better result. There's sometimes it's tough to know that if let's say you're a small business owner, uh, this isn't your core competency. It's a little bit different if maybe you've been a CTO and you've gone through these digital transformations before. So just making sure you have the right partner, you feel comfortable with the plan, the cost is in a comfortable range for you. This isn't something you want to get into kind of haphazardly. Any kind of digital transformation is a pretty significant investment.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, can you give some examples of some projects that you've worked on, and maybe a day in the life, what it looked like before and after the project was completed?
Yeah, specifically on the AI side, I mentioned earlier, we're helping a logistics company with their last mile delivery automate their dispatching. So the first go around to that is really, getting all the data together, building a database, adding it into the database, coming up with the decision points and who that would dispatch to, and that's really, the first POC phase. Right now, we're working on getting feedback for that, training that model better. In the long run, this will help reduce headcount. There's probably about 50 dispatchers right now, and so this will save that company a lot of money in the long run. So the scale of this will also, as they grow, we're at 50 right now, but that number would get larger. So it'd be pretty significant. We have another customer. They do a lot of professional services where they're doing writing, contract writing, replying to bids. They have a lot of data in their system, so we've been able to make a virtual agent bid writer. Step one of that is taking data that exists in the system, existing proposals, and using that to generate actual contracts and to have somebody review it. In the long run, as this gets smarter, customers will be able to go in self-service, pay per report, and have this filled out on their own. So we're doing a lot of this, like I said, POC phase one work right now. We'll have more, I think, a better idea on kind of what the numbers look like as we roll into those second and third phases. But these things definitely have a lot of potential to make a positive impact on these companies and their bottom line and scalability.
Yeah, and as a company's investing at the beginning, it's a harder conversation, but once they see some of the payback and the return on that, I'm sure it's hindsight is 2020, right? But I think the other thing is, I guess at a level, a lot of companies, if you're not looking into or getting started on these types of projects, many times you're just going to get left behind because your competitors are, and I think it's so important to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, this tech changes so fast. So right now, generative AI is really exciting, but there's a lot of folks that have had, machine learning models for a long time, right? So some of the deeper learning is the next evolution of that. But some folks don't have any of this at all, right? So you're already a couple iterations behind at this point. So you definitely want to dive in and start looking at these things. Otherwise, your ability to be competitive, scale your business cost effectively, your competitors will have much higher margins. They'll be able to move quicker. So you can only stay behind the curve so long, and this stuff is moving exponentially. So every day you're not looking into this, and you're not at least coming up with a plan. You're setting yourself up maybe 2 to 3 times further behind than you normally would.
Got it. So as far as managing RevStar as the CEO, what are your main responsibilities versus the team? Like how do you delegate different project responsibilities?
Yeah, it's definitely changed over time. So initially, when this was a side hustle, I was doing the coding. At one point, I was managing projects, managing delivery. So these days, I'm mostly, helping folks figure out how to solve their problems, right? So I'm having a lot of conversations with different customers, coming up with high-level solutions, and then bringing the team in to really put more mass and gravity behind that, and coming up with the actual plans and executing.
Makes a lot of sense. So, as far as like trends that you're seeing in the segment of the market that you're in, what are you seeing? Obviously, you mentioned AI as one big trend, but are there other, big shifts that you're seeing even in the years that you've been doing this?
I think the biggest shift has been the amount of SaaS platforms that are out there now. So we were certainly helping build a lot of them, but there's almost an app. It's the old joke. There's an app for that, right? There's just
Yeah,
a lot of SaaS tools out there. So to be able to get into some kind of basic system that allows you to keep your data organized and do the basic operational workflows, is a lot lower barrier to entry for companies. So I think one trend is just getting in and getting the basics done. The other thing, the low code, no code. I don't love this for every use case, but if you have some basic data capture, basic workflows, things that maybe you need a little customization. You don't 100% love SaaS tools that are out there, or it's just a smaller use case and the licensing is prohibitive. You can get in and build something a lot cheaper now with those technologies. The other thing I think is getting all these technologies together, right? So if you take, cellular data, IoT, big data, and AI, right? Think about I talked about logistics a little bit earlier, but if you could predict weather patterns, you know, adjust routes on the fly through connected autonomous vehicles. So starting to see how some of this, IoT and AI come together, for example, it'll be interesting, right? There's a lot of emerging tech, but it kind of hasn't all been brought together in every use case yet.
got it. Now, I noticed that you are an AWS consulting partner. How does that benefit your organization in terms of what you're able to do for your clients?
So they're really great at supporting us, not only with different engagements, and providing some expertise on their side where we may need some gaps filled in, but they also provide a lot of really good training for us when new technologies come out when they release them. There's really good material on them, so they kind of help us stay educated and stay up to date on technologies. They also give us a platform that we know scales well. We know it's compliant for our customers where that's a consideration. We know somebody's strong standing behind it. So I think, with all the different technologies popping up on the AI side, staying close to the train tracks, as they say, with some of these larger providers is important, right? Because there's a lot of this pop up AI solutions that you have to try to wade through. And so we like being partner with a company that's in it for the long run.
So, are there some specific services or capabilities that AWS provides that you're really excited about?
Yeah, definitely the new generative AI services. So we use Bedrock, is the name of their service for some of those AI projects I was talking about earlier. They have some really great self-service AI built into the actual AWS console now that helps our DevOps engineers move quicker, be able to perform reviews on environments faster. It's called Amazon Q. We have our developers using Amazon Code Whisperer, which is kind of like I'd say an AI pair programmer. So it goes through and helps generate code, helps them find mistakes easier. So we're definitely trying to implement as much of the generative AI as we can, not only to help our customers but also make ourselves more efficient.
No, I noticed you mentioned your build center in Colombia, where you have part of your team out there. How did that come together, and how do you collaborate effectively with your team there?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting story. So we hired a project manager who happened to be Colombian. And when we were looking to expand the team, a lot of this happened during COVID. Everybody was remote. And he had mentioned, hey, I know some really good guys down in Colombia. We can start a nearshore, operation. And so we tried a few folks out on the project. It worked out really well. And we continued to scale and grow there. The time zone alignment is great, right? So that helps with communication. They're either on the same time zone or 1 hour behind us, depending on where we land in daylight savings time. But we use a lot of the tools that most folks use, right? We have Slack, we have Azure DevOps for managing work. We're very intentional about how we team build. So recently some folks from the U.S. went down there. We did a team dinner, right? Things like that. We try to support in both the U.S. and Colombia initiatives where we're getting the team
Sure.
together more regularly, because it's tough when you're not coming to an office every day. We like the remote work and the global team, but we have to be intentional about creating opportunities to get together, build relationships.
Sure. No, culture and team building is so important, and especially in a remote first workforce like we have, really for most companies nowadays. So that's really interesting. Now, you mentioned AI and IoT kind of coming together, and serverless technologies and the like. Um, what other do you see other trends that you think are going to play a bigger role in the space in the years to come?
I think just how AI evolves, right? Um, how people utilize the AI. We're just scratching the surface, right? So a lot of people are generating content, maybe doing some decision making, but I look at diagnostics and healthcare. A lot of this stuff right now is experimental, but I was looking at something the other day where they were talking about being able to diagnose Alzheimer's early based on voice, right? That's really exciting. So, how this stuff gets rolled out eventually, you'll go in, see your doctor, will talk like this, and you'll walk out with a diagnosis, right? So, just seeing how it'll get rolled out, I think that's going to be, the catalyst for everything. Now, combining it with AR, VR, you go to a mechanic, you're fresh out of school, you put on some AR headset, AI walks you through how to fix something, right? So learning curves for different jobs. I think as these technologies come together, but AI will still be at the center of it. It's what's going to make our lives easier, make things move faster, allow us to really streamline a lot of different facets of our lives.
Yeah, no, it's a really exciting area of tech and development. Have there been any projects that you've worked on over the years that were really surprising to you in terms of the final deliverable, how much it really impacted the company, and really was very different than what you expected going into it, and had a better result at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think we've been lucky to work with some startups and take them from you know drawing on a napkin to product that's used by tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of users. So I'd say all those are always, I don't know if the word shocking, but it's really cool when you see that happen. I think it's a little bit different feeling than when you're building something for an existing business. And not that that's not important, but to watch something grow from a seed and that you were a part of the whole time. It's been some of the more rewarding things that we've done.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's a lot of very gratifying work that you and your team are doing. And any advice for people who are just getting started out in the space in terms of managing a remote team, and some things that you've learned along the way that you wish you knew when you started?
It's interesting. You go to school for computer science and get a job coding, and someday you end up running a business, and you realize you probably should have got a psychology degree, right? But I think just people, right? You have to love working with people. The larger you get, the harder it is to kind of do things yourself, right? You have to rely on others. So building that strong culture, having really good core values, being able to understand what motivates people on your team and trying to get the best out of them. It's a little bit different than your core skill set as an engineer, right? Sometimes computers are very intuitive to you because that's the background you have, and learning more of the soft skills, EQ, and how to work with people can be tough. So, I'd say invest in those areas. The technology changes, but one thing that doesn't change is you always need good people to work in your business, right? That'll probably never be different, even if you automate as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's a really good point and something to always keep in mind. And one question I didn't ask you, what was your background coming into this before you started RevStar?
So I was a software engineer for a lot of years, and then I moved up into management roles, managing teams, running departments with multiple product teams. So always been in software development, either in hands-on coding or in a leadership role.
And was there a point at which you realized that entrepreneurship and all of this was the right route for yourself?
Yeah, it was something I always wanted to do. That's why I started it as a side hustle. I think, you get excited to have a good job, a career, it's comfortable. So, it stayed that way for a long time as I was kind of climbing the corporate ladder. But you get to a point where you realize you can kind of only influence things so much at work. You can only impact one company so much before you have to move on to the next role, right? So for me, this was a way I could get in and help a lot of people, make a positive impact on their business, help their business grow, and to be able to replicate that, over and over again is really rewarding.
No, that's great. And I really appreciate your taking the time out to join us on Software Spotlight today. It really gives us a different look on software and software development that we haven't had on the podcast to date. So I really appreciate your taking the time out to show us a peek behind the scenes.
It's an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So coming up on our next episode, Greg DeVore from Screen Steps will be joining us, taking a look at transferring knowledge to your employees faster. And that'll actually be on our next episode. If you're not already subscribed to our weekly newsletter, head to softwareoasis.com to sign up for that. And join us next Wednesday on our upcoming webinar, which is Wednesday at 1 p.m. And that is on education and software. So, once again, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We've had Ken Pamela from RevStar, and we've appreciated your joining us on the episode today.